The elegant Villa Valerius sits nestled among the rolling hills outside Rome, its marble columns gleaming in the afternoon sunlight, as slaves tend to perfectly manicured gardens that showcase the wealth and refined taste of its owner. You find yourself observing Marcus Aurelius Valerius, a successful grain merchant whose 42 years have been blessed with prosperity that allows him to enjoy the finest luxuries the empire has to offer. But what you're about to witness will prove that sometimes our most faithful companions know secrets about our own homes that we ourselves have never discovered. The villa represents everything that successful Romans aspire to achieve. Spacious rooms decorated with frescoes depicting mythological scenes, courtyards filled with exotic plants from across the empire, and servants who attend to every need with the efficiency that comes from years of training in aristocratic households. Marcus has built this life through shrewd business dealings and careful political connections, transforming himself from a modest trader into one of Rome's most prosperous merchants. His family reflects this success perfectly. Claudia, his wife of 20 years, manages the household with the grace expected of a patrician matron, while their 16-year-old son, Gaius, shows promise of following in his father's commercial footsteps. The villa bustles with the controlled activity of a well-run estate, where every slave knows their duties and every detail reflects the owner's taste and prosperity. But the most beloved member of this household isn't human at all. Fidus, a magnificent mixed-breed dog whose size and intelligence make him both guardian and companion, has been Marcus's constant companion for 5 years. The dog's loyalty is legendary among the villa's inhabitants. He follows his master everywhere during the day, sleeps outside Marcus's bedroom door at night, and has never shown aggression toward family or friends, while remaining eternally vigilant against any potential threats to his beloved humans. What makes Fidus special isn't just his devotion, but his remarkable intelligence. He seems to understand not just simple commands, but complex situations, responding to family emotions and adapting his behavior to circumstances in ways that constantly amaze everyone who interacts with him. Marcus often jokes that Fidus is more perceptive than many of his business associates, and recent events are about to prove that observation more accurate than he ever imagined.
The strange behavior begins on a night when the full moon casts silver light across the villa's gardens, creating an almost magical atmosphere that transforms familiar daytime spaces into mysterious landscapes of shadow and illumination. Marcus awakens to an unusual sound, the rhythmic scraping of something against earth, repeated with mechanical persistence that gradually penetrates his consciousness and draws him from comfortable sleep toward growing curiosity about its source. Moving quietly to avoid waking Claudia, Marcus makes his way to the window that overlooks the villa's main courtyard, where the sound seems to be originating. What he sees stops him cold with surprise and confusion. Fidus, his normally obedient and well-behaved companion, is digging furiously in the same corner of the garden where a decorative olive tree casts shadows over a patch of ground that has never attracted any particular attention during daytime hours. The dog's behavior is completely unlike anything Marcus has ever observed. Fidus digs with intense concentration, his powerful claws sending dirt flying as he creates a hole that grows steadily deeper with each passing minute. When he pauses occasionally to rest, the dog's attention remains focused on the excavation site, with an intensity that suggests that he's not engaged in random canine activity, but pursuing some specific objective that only he understands. "What are you doing, boy?" Marcus whispers to himself, watching his beloved pet work with determination that seems almost human in its purposefulness. What could possibly be buried in that spot that's worth this much effort? The digging continues for nearly an hour before Fidus finally stops, apparently satisfied with the depth he has achieved, or perhaps simply exhausted by his nocturnal labor. He sniffs around the excavation site carefully, as if confirming that his work has accomplished its intended purpose, then fills the hole back in with the same methodical approach he used to create it. When finished, he returns to his usual sleeping spot outside Marcus's bedroom door, leaving no evidence of his midnight activity except for some dirt on his paws that could be attributed to normal daytime garden exploration.
The next morning brings no acknowledgement from Fidus that anything unusual occurred during the night. He greets Marcus with his typical enthusiasm, accompanies him on his morning walk through the villa's grounds, and shows no particular interest in the garden area where he spent so much time digging just hours earlier. Marcus examines the spot carefully, but finds no visible signs of the previous night's excavation. The ground appears undisturbed, the olive tree stands as it always has, and nothing suggests that any digging ever took place. Perhaps I dreamed the whole thing, Marcus tells himself, though he knows perfectly well that what he witnessed was real. Or maybe Fidus was just following some scent that attracted his attention. Dogs do strange things sometimes. But the behavior repeats the following night with identical precision. Once again, Marcus is awakened by the sound of digging, and once again he watches Fidus work at exactly the same location with the same focused intensity. The pattern becomes clear over the next week as the nightly excavations continue without variation, always the same spot, always the same methodical approach, always the same careful restoration of the site when the work is finished. Claudia begins to notice Marcus's increasing preoccupation with something he won't discuss, and his sleep becomes restless as he finds himself listening for the sounds that herald Fidus's mysterious nocturnal activities. "You're acting strangely, husband," she observes during breakfast one morning. "Is there something wrong with the business? Are you worried about something you're not telling me?" Marcus's explanation about Fidus's digging behavior meets with the skepticism he expected. "Dogs dig holes, Marcus," Claudia responds, with the practical attitude that makes her such an effective household manager. "It's what they do. You're reading too much significance into normal canine behavior." But Marcus knows this isn't normal behavior, and his growing obsession with understanding Fidus's motivation leads him to spend increasing amounts of time observing his pet during daylight hours, looking for clues that might explain the nighttime digging compulsion.
The breakthrough comes during the second week of observations, when Marcus decides to conduct his own investigation of the site that has captured Fidus's attention so completely. Armed with proper digging tools and accompanied by Brutus, his most trusted gardening slave, Marcus begins excavating the area beneath the olive tree during daylight hours, while Fidus watches with obvious interest and approval. "Master, are you sure about this?" Brutus asks as they begin removing dirt from the precise location where Fidus has been conducting his nightly excavations. "This tree has been here since before you purchased the villa. The previous owner planted it when the garden was first designed." But Marcus's determination to understand his dog's behavior overrides any concerns about disturbing established landscaping. "Fidus has been trying to tell me something for 2 weeks, he replies, wielding his shovel with growing excitement as they dig deeper into ground that proves much softer than expected. "Whatever he's detected here, I need to know what it is." The discovery that follows exceeds anything Marcus could have anticipated. At a depth of approximately 4 feet, Brutus's shovel strikes something solid that produces a metallic sound completely different from the dull impact of iron against stone. Further excavation reveals the edge of what appears to be a bronze chest, carefully buried and positioned to avoid the olive tree's root system. "By Jupiter's beard!" Marcus breathes as they carefully uncover what proves to be an ornate storage container bearing decorative engravings that suggest considerable age and value. Fidus knew this was here. Somehow, he sensed what was buried beneath ground that's been undisturbed for years. The chest proves too heavy for easy removal, requiring additional help from other household slaves who are sworn to secrecy about their discovery. When finally lifted from its earthen hiding place and transported to the privacy of Marcus's study, the container reveals locks and hinges that, while corroded by time, appear to have protected their contents from moisture and decay.
Opening the chest reveals treasures that transform Marcus's understanding of both his property's history and his own family's future prospects. The container holds a collection of gold coins from various periods of Roman history, precious stones that sparkle in the lamplight, and jewelry that represents the accumulated wealth of someone who clearly possessed both excellent taste and substantial resources. But more intriguing than the treasure itself are the documents also stored in the chest, scrolls and wax tablets that tell the story of the villa's previous owner and explain why such valuable items were buried rather than openly displayed or properly bequeathed to heirs. Marcus reads with growing fascination as the papers reveal a tale of political intrigue, hidden wealth, and desperate measures taken to preserve family assets during dangerous times. The previous owner, Senator Lucius Cornelius Maximus, had apparently anticipated his own downfall during the political upheavals that marked the end of Emperor Caligula's reign. Facing accusations of conspiracy and the likelihood of execution or exile, he had buried his most precious possessions in the villa's garden, hoping that future occupants might somehow discover and appreciate treasures that represented a lifetime of careful accumulation. "Look at this," Marcus tells Claudia as they examine the contents together in the privacy of their bedroom, with Fidus lying contentedly at their feet as if satisfied that his mission has been accomplished. This map shows the location of other buried caches throughout the property. Senator Maximus didn't just hide one treasure chest, he created an entire network of hidden wealth that's been waiting beneath our feet for over a decade. The implications are staggering. The villa that Marcus purchased as a comfortable family home has been concealing treasures that could multiply his wealth many times over, transforming him from a successful merchant into one of Rome's truly wealthy aristocrats. But more than the financial impact, the discovery represents validation of the bond between human and animal that has enabled Fidus to communicate knowledge that human senses could never detect. The full scope of Senator Maximus's hidden wealth becomes clear over the following days, as Marcus and his most trusted slaves follow the ancient map's directions to locate additional burial sites throughout the villa's extensive grounds. Each location yields treasures that surpass the previous discoveries: silver dining services that once graced imperial tables, gemstones from the far reaches of the empire, and gold bullion that represents more wealth than Marcus accumulated during his entire mercantile career. But what fascinates Marcus even more than the material treasures are the personal documents that accompany each cache, revealing the complex story of a man who foresaw his own destruction and took extraordinary measures to preserve his life's work for unknown future beneficiaries. Senator Maximus had been a collector, a patron of arts, and a scholar whose possessions represented not just wealth, but cultural refinement of the highest order. The most significant discovery comes from the largest cache, buried beneath what appears to be a decorative fountain, but which the map reveals was specifically designed to conceal the entrance to an underground chamber. When Marcus and his workers remove the fountain's base, they uncover stone steps leading down to a carefully constructed vault that has preserved its contents perfectly, despite years of concealment. Inside the chamber, Marcus finds not just treasure,
but an entire library of scrolls and documents that tell the complete story of Senator Maximus's life and the circumstances that led to his desperate attempt to preserve his legacy. The collection includes correspondence with other senators, detailed accounts of political conspiracies, and most remarkably, predictions about future political developments that proved remarkably accurate. This man knew he was doomed, Marcus realizes as he reads through documents that chronicle the senator's growing awareness of the forces gathering against him. But instead of fleeing or fighting, he chose to ensure that his life's work would survive even if he couldn't. He buried these treasures, hoping that someday someone would discover them and appreciate what he had built. The correspondence reveals that Senator Maximus had no direct heirs, having lost his family to plague several years before his own political downfall. His decision to bury his treasures rather than donate them to the state or distribute them among friends reflects both his distrust of the political system that destroyed him and his hope that future villa occupants would prove more worthy custodians of his life's work. But the documents also contain warnings about the dangers that could accompany such discoveries. Senator Maximus had enemies who survived his downfall. Political rivals who would be extremely interested in learning about any hidden assets that escaped confiscation when his property was seized by the state. The treasures represent not just wealth, but potential danger for anyone bold enough to claim them.
The situation becomes more complex when Marcus realizes that his discovery hasn't gone entirely unnoticed despite his precautions. Gaius Flavius Brutus, a neighbor whose villa overlooks Marcus's property, has been observing the unusual activity with growing curiosity and suspicion. As a former associate of Senator Maximus, Brutus possesses knowledge about the previous owner's affairs that makes him particularly interested in any discoveries related to the confiscated estate. "I couldn't help but notice the extensive excavation work you've been conducting," Brutus mentions during what appears to be a casual social visit, but which Marcus recognizes as a fishing expedition for information. "I hope you haven't encountered any problems with the property's foundations or drainage systems. These old villas sometimes develop structural issues that require significant repair work." The conversation that follows becomes a delicate dance of misdirection and subtle threats as both men attempt to determine how much the other knows about the buried treasures. Brutus makes oblique references to Senator Maximus's lost assets, while Marcus tries to gauge whether his neighbor represents a threat to his newfound wealth or merely a curious bystander attracted by unusual activity. Senator Maximus was known to have been quite resourceful in protecting his interests, Brutus observes, with a meaningful look that suggests intimate knowledge of the previous owner's affairs. "I sometimes wonder whether all of his resources were properly accounted for when the state seized his property. It would be unfortunate if valuable assets remained hidden, wouldn't it?" Marcus realizes he's facing exactly the kind of danger that Senator Maximus had anticipated when he buried his treasures. The discovery that should bring joy and security instead creates new vulnerabilities as knowledge of the hidden wealth begins to spread among people who might have legitimate or illegitimate claims to portions of the treasure. The threat becomes more concrete when Marcus discovers that his villa is being watched by individuals who aren't part of his household staff or normal social circle. Unfamiliar faces appear in the nearby marketplace, asking questions about his family and his recent activities. Claudia reports that strange men have approached household slaves, offering money for information about their master's affairs. "We're being investigated," Marcus tells his wife during a private conference in their bedroom, with Fidus lying alert at their feet as if sensing the tension that has infected the household. "Someone knows or suspects that we've found something valuable, and they're trying to determine exactly what we've discovered and how much it might be worth." The investigation reveals that Brutus has connections to officials who were involved in the original confiscation of Senator Maximus's estate, men who would be very interested in learning about any assets that escaped their initial seizure.
These aren't random thieves or opportunistic criminals, but politically connected individuals who could claim legal authority to confiscate newly discovered treasures on behalf of the Roman state. The situation forces Marcus to make difficult decisions about how much of his discovery to reveal and how much to conceal. Keeping the treasures secret becomes increasingly difficult as their value requires conversion into usable assets, but any attempt to sell or trade the items could attract exactly the kind of attention that would prove most dangerous. The crisis reaches its peak when Brutus arrives at the villa with several companions whose official bearing and expensive clothing mark them as men of significant political influence. Their visit, ostensibly social, clearly serves as a formal demand for information about Marcus's recent discoveries and their legal status under Roman property law. "We understand that you've been conducting archaeological excavations on your property," announces Gaius Cornelius Maximus, who identifies himself as Senator Maximus's surviving cousin and potential heir to any discovered assets. "As the closest living relative of the property's previous owner, I naturally have considerable interest in any findings that might relate to family assets." The confrontation that follows tests everything Marcus has learned about Roman politics and business negotiation as he attempts to protect his discovery while avoiding direct conflict with individuals who possess both legal standing and political connections that could prove extremely dangerous if handled incorrectly. But what the visitors don't anticipate is Fidus's intervention in the proceedings. The dog, who has remained quietly observant throughout the tense conversation, suddenly becomes agitated when Cornelius attempts to examine some of the treasure that Marcus has been forced to display as evidence of his discoveries. Fidus positions himself between the visitors and the treasure, growling with an intensity that makes everyone in the room aware that any attempt to simply confiscate the items would face determined canine resistance. "Your dog seems quite protective of your findings," Brutus observes with nervous humor, clearly recognizing that Fidus represents a complication they hadn't anticipated. "Perhaps he understands the value of what you've discovered better than we initially realized." The standoff that develops forces both sides to reconsider their positions, as it becomes clear that removing the treasures would require dealing with a dog whose loyalty to Marcus appears absolute, and whose size and determination make him a formidable guardian for the disputed wealth.
The resolution comes through a negotiation that demonstrates Marcus's business acumen while acknowledging the legitimate concerns of all parties involved. Rather than attempting to keep all the discovered treasure or surrendering it entirely to state confiscation, Marcus proposes a division that provides appropriate compensation to Senator Maximus's surviving relatives while allowing him to retain the majority of the discovery as reward for his role in locating the hidden assets. Senator Maximus buried these treasures, hoping that worthy people would eventually discover and appreciate them, Marcus argues during the negotiations. He specifically chose not to reveal their location to family members or political associates, suggesting that he wanted the discovery to depend on merit rather than connection or inheritance. The agreement that emerges satisfies most parties while establishing legal precedent for the ownership of discovered assets buried by previous property owners. Marcus retains the bulk of the treasure, along with clear legal title that protects him from future challenges, while the senator's relatives receive compensation that acknowledges their connection to the original owner. But the most important aspect of the resolution is the recognition given to Fidus for his role in the discovery process. The dog's instinctive detection of the buried treasure becomes part of the legal record, establishing his status as a co-discoverer whose contribution was essential to locating assets that might otherwise have remained hidden indefinitely. Marcus ensures that Fidus receives appropriate rewards for his service: the finest food,
a comfortable sleeping area specifically designed for his needs, and most importantly, the kind of respect and affection that acknowledges his crucial role in transforming the family's fortunes. The dog's loyalty and intelligence have not only uncovered hidden wealth, but have also protected it from those who would have claimed it unjustly. The story of Fidus and the buried treasure becomes legendary throughout Rome, inspiring other villa owners to pay closer attention to their animal companions and encouraging a deeper appreciation for the intelligence and intuitive abilities that domestic animals bring to their relationships with humans. Marcus's wealth and status grow significantly, but his greatest treasure remains his relationship with the remarkable dog whose midnight digging revealed secrets that changed their lives forever. As you watch Marcus and Fidus walking together through gardens that now hold no more secrets, the man's hand resting affectionately on his companion's head while they survey the peaceful beauty of their transformed estate, you understand that you've witnessed something extraordinary. This isn't just a story about discovering treasure. It's a demonstration of how the bonds between humans and animals can unlock mysteries that pure human intelligence might never solve.